Hello, fifth grade. Today we're going to be reading Riding with Pride from our Scholastic News magazine. A young rodeo champion honors the Black Cowboys who helped tame the Wild West. As you read, I want you to think about why is it important to know that there were African American cowboys. The gate flew open and Savannah Roberts took off. Perched atop her horse, Shortshank, Savannah could hear the roar of the crowd. The 12-year-old and her horse raced at top speed, whipping around barrels placed on the race course. No other rider could match her speed. Savannah, the youngest rider in the competition, won the ladies' barrel racing event at the Bill Pickett Championship Rodeo last September. The rodeo celebrates African American cowboys and cowgirls, past and present. Winning at this rodeo made me feel really special and proud, says Savannah. On the trails. Before rodeos existed, cowboys lived and worked in the western U.S. in the mid-1800s. Many people in the West owned cattle ranches, but they didn't have fences to keep their cattle close to home. They hired cowboys to ride around on horseback and prevent their animals from roaming off. Most ranch owners sold cattle to be eaten as beef in the eastern U.S. Cowboys had to lead huge herds along rugged trails to railroad stations in Kansas and other states. These cattle drivers lasted for weeks and covered hundreds of miles. Cowboys had to guide cattle across rivers and constantly be on the lookout for cattle thieves. It was hard, dangerous work, and you worked for low pay, explains historian Michael Stearless. And over here we have a map of the Chisholm Trail, which is one of the most famous cowboy trails. So this is the way that they would take to steer the cattle. A new way of life. Though books and movies often show only white cowboys, about 1 out of every 4 cowboys were black. There were more black cowboys in Texas than anywhere else. Many African American cowboys had been enslaved, but were freed after the Civil War ended in 1865. They faced discrimination from ranchers and fellow cowboys, and they often did the hardest jobs, like breaking untamed horses, training them to be ridden. Black cowboys faced the added burden of racism because some white cowboys didn't want them on their ranches, says Stearless. Still, many of these men saw working on the trails as a chance at a new life. The rodeo is born. By the late 1880s, barbed wire fences were common on ranches, making it easier to control the cattle, and railroads reached more cities in the West, so ranchers didn't have to send the cattle along the trails. Though fewer cowboys were needed, the era of rodeos were beginning. In these events, cowboys showed off the skills they used on ranches and trails, riding horses, performing tricks, and roping and wrestling steers. Bill Pickett was one of the first and most famous rodeo stars. Today, the Bill Pickett Rodeo keeps the history of black cowboys alive. It reminds us how important people like Pickett were in shaping our country. The cowboy is an American icon, says Stearless. Including black cowboys in our history produces a sense of pride. Savannah agrees. She honors the cowboy tradition by trying to inspire the next generation of cowboys and cowgirls. I love encouraging other kids and showing them it's possible to do what I do, she says. What Savannah wants you to know. My goal is to be the first African American female national rodeo champ. There aren't a lot of black cowgirls in my home state of Colorado. It makes me stand out, in a good way. Don't judge a book by its cover. People sometimes underestimate me because I'm young and my horse is smaller than the others, but we're super fast. My horse is like a member of my family. Shortshank and I make a great team. No matter what, I know that my horse is always going to race his heart out for me. There's a video that goes along with this. We'll give it a try.
Nate Love, African American Cowboy. From the 1860s to the 1880s, thousands of cowboys herded cattle in the American West. About 1/4 of them were African American. One of the most famous black cowboys was Nate Love. Like many black cowboys, Love was born into slavery. Love published a book about his experiences in 1907. Here's his story.
In an old log cabin in Tennessee in June 1854, I first saw the light of day. The exact date of my birth I never knew, because in those days no count was kept of the birth of a slave baby. Our plantation was situated in the heart of the South, and on the plantations all around us were thousands of slaves.
When Love was a kid, America's Civil War broke out. North and South fought over the issue of slavery. After the war, Love and other enslaved people were finally free.
It was not long before all the slaves in the surrounding country were celebrating their freedom. My father decided to start out for himself. He rented 20 acres of land. Our first crop consisted of corn, tobacco, and a few vegetables.
When Love was 15, he headed west. He decided to become a cowboy, one of the few jobs open to black men at that time.
After breakfast, I asked the camp boss for a job as cowboy. He asked me if I could ride a wild horse. I said, yes, sir. The boss said he would give me a job and pay me $30 per month. I worked with this outfit for over 3 years. I became known throughout the country as a good all-around cowboy.
But being a cowboy was dangerous work. Cowboys dealt with extreme weather and tough trail conditions. They also sometimes fought with Native Americans who were defending their land along the trails. On one cattle drive, Love even had to deal with a stampede.
It was shortly after dark, when the storm commenced. The 2,500 head of cattle strung out along the trail became panic-stricken and stampeded. Despite our utmost efforts, we were unable to keep them in line. Imagine riding your horse at the top of his speed through torrents of rain and hail and darkness so black that we could not see our horses' heads, chasing an immense herd of maddened cattle. There were holes, cliffs, gullies, and big rocks scattered all around, but we never thought of our personal danger that night.
Another time, Love saved the life of a fellow cowboy.
I'd entered the river and my horse was swimming easily. When on glancing around, I saw one of the boys go under the water. Both man and horse completely disappeared. They soon came up, only to disappear again. I saw at once something was wrong, so when they came up the second time, I threw my rope. It fell near the man, who had the presence of mind to grasp it and hold on while I snaked both man and horse out to safety.
By 1890, the cowboy era was coming to an end. Cattle could now be delivered all over the country by train. Love found new work on the railroads. But he always remembered his time on the trails.
The cowboy is almost a being of the past. But I, Nate Love, hale, hearty, and happy, will ever cherish a fond and loving feeling for the old days on the range.
Okay, and then today, for your ERQ question, on a separate sheet of paper, you need to summarize the section on the trails. So you're going to look back at just that one section on the trails, and you need to summarize. Think about what summarize means. It does need to be an ERQ, so I should see a DWB. I should see at least 4 sentences today. Summarize the section on the trails. Hope you have a great day.